Jan Karski is now 80 years old, but as a young man he played an important role in documenting the Holocaust. He was a courier for the Polish underground during World War II, and he brought the world confirmation about what the Nazis were doing to people in concentration camps. In November 1944, 2 months before the liberation of Auschwitz, Jan Karski wrote a book about his infiltration of a death camp. And now another man, Thomas Wood, has written a biography of Jan Karski. Both men are joining us in our Washington studio. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being with us on this day of remembrance. Thomas Wood, one man who was trying to tell the world about the tragedy at the time was, of course, Mr. Karski. It was a story of extraordinary courage. What struck you most about Mr. Karski's story?
The sheer altruism of it all, the fact that he didn't have to undertake the missions he undertook. He didn't have to go to the lengths that he went to try to tell the world what was happening. As a Roman Catholic, he didn't have any natural place in that whole struggle, but he nevertheless made superhuman efforts to try to tell the world what was happening. These leaders said, look, we can get you into the Warsaw Ghetto. We can show you how horrible it is in that prison city within a city.
Phenomenal story about
and
how he went into the ghetto and observed the brutality firsthand. Dressed himself.
He wore the Star of David, he wore the tattered clothes. And
dressed himself as a Jew, became a Jew to see what was happening. And with that firsthand evidence, felt armed even better to do his job.
Well, and then they said, they asked him to undertake an even more dangerous mission to go into eastern Poland and into one of the camps. And that, I believe, no one else ever did. No one has ever tried, as best I could tell, no one in the course of the war ever tried to enter the actual extermination machinery and see what was going on. He did. He saw a mass murder before his eyes, and he made it out, barely. And Frankfurter got up and he paced back and forth in a room in the Polish embassy that I was just in a couple of weeks ago. It was very dramatic. He paced back and forth, and finally he stopped and he looked at Karski and he said, "Young man, I have to be completely frank with you. I am unable to believe you." And the ambassador jumped up and said, "You can't say this to his face. You can't
Don't tell him he's a liar.
You know, this is a diplomatic disaster." And Frankfurter said, "I didn't say he's a liar. I said I'm unable to believe him. There's a difference." And I think that encapsulated the reaction of much of the civilized world to what was happening. They were simply viscerally incapable of believing what was going on, that any nation could systematically process people to death. And Frankfurter was totally unable to believe it.
Now, he found more welcome ears when he talked to President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt.
President Roosevelt knew a lot of what Karski had come to tell him already. The leader of the Jewish community in the U.S., Rabbi Wise, had been in the same office only a week before, telling him many of the same things. But here's where the meeting with Frankfurter had such consequences. By the time he met with, after that disaster with Frankfurter, Karski was loath to tell about his personal experiences to anyone anymore, because he was afraid that he would again meet with that kind of rejection, which is, as a diplomat, the worst thing that can possibly happen. So he presented the second-hand materials that he had. He presented detailed information about the fate of the Jews, but he did not tell Roosevelt what he saw with his own eyes. He had been spooked out of it by Frankfurter.
Nashville newspaperman E. Thomas Wood met a man whose story he just had to tell. Karski, the man who stood up to the Gestapo. James Lewis has more now on heroism and tenacity.
Captured by Gestapo.
What do an 81-year-old Gestapo survivor and a 30-year-old Nashville newspaperman have in common?
I was simply fascinated when I met Karski. I couldn't get him out of my mind.
Nazi genocide and heroism drew these two together. Wood had to write the book about Karski, and he has. Jan Karski, now a college professor in the United States, was almost killed because he was in the Polish underground. Nazis captured him and tortured him, but he would not talk.
I think it was the sense that, the sense of altruism behind what he did, the sense that there was no good reason for him to have done what he did. It was a randomness.
Wood wonders how Karski kept from telling the Nazis what they wanted, which could have been plenty.
I don't know whether I have those resources. Maybe you only discover that when you're strapped into a torture chamber with guards from the Gestapo coming at you with iron pipes.
The Polish underground got Karski to the west. He warned them about the tortures and deaths in Auschwitz and Buchenwald and Dachau. They listened, but they did nothing.
It's hard for me to sit in judgment of Roosevelt, Churchill, the other decision makers of that time, and to say that they did the wrong thing. They did win the war. Some people were saved.
Karski's story will now be known to the world, and E. Thomas Wood of Nashville, Tennessee, told it.
It's been almost an otherworldly experience. It's been, at times, as though I'm watching someone else go through what's gone on.
After 3 years of interviewing, what impressions did Karski make?
He smokes probably 2 packs of filterless Lark cigarettes a day and enjoys the occasional Manhattan, and I think he figures that if the Gestapo couldn't take him out, then there's no reason to worry about things like that.
James Lewis, the Channel for News.